hand. I won't look at that.
Yeah, don't look at it. Welcome to In the Zone. I am Craig Zimmerman, your host, and I am proud to have across from me for In the Zone number 38, our friend from CTV6, Denny White. Welcome.
My pleasure.
So, as we said, Mr. White, there's going to be no stumpers here. Pretty simple and
That's
easy.
good.
The magician in the booth can cut it apart if we say something wrong. So,
That's good. That's good to have that.
So, you were born and raised where, Denny?
Marysville.
Okay. So, you were born and raised in Marysville, Michigan. Tell us about growing up in Marysville.
Much smaller town then. I'm older than you, so basically what I had to do, what we did is we spent all our time outside playing. So athletics has been a major part of my life, and when I went to Marysville High School, we were very successful athletically. So
Sure.
I just continued.
I'm in the same group though that when I got up in summertime, you got up, you got dressed, and you went outside, and you didn't come home and maybe to eat something for lunch, and then you went back outside, and you came home when you heard your mother say time to come in, or she rang a bell.
The street light came on. It was time. Yep.
There you go. So, mother, father, siblings growing up in Marysville.
Mother and father. My father worked for the state government. My mother, until her youngest child was out of high school, stayed home, and then worked at the hallowed Marysville Bakery.
Okay.
So that was a good place to stop. I have 4 brothers and sisters. There's 5 of us all together, 2 brothers, 2 sisters.
Okay. Are they still in the area?
I have a sister who's passed away. The others are in the area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went to the vaunted Marysville High School that was just torn down about 8-10 years ago.
Yes, I did. Yes. In fact, there's no school that I went to building that's still standing, which is a very interesting situation.
Your high school stood for a long time.
It did for a long time.
Yeah, that was one of the older high schools in the
Oh,
area.
yes, yeah.
And so that's one of those things, and I've talked to other teachers, other administrators, and we talk about the age of buildings, but that building probably got used beyond its life.
I think that's definitely true. It was, when I went back, maybe 3 years before they tore it down, the halls were very narrow, the lockers were skinny, but we were beginning to sense that while we were there.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yes.
Yep. So you must have been there in the time that Walt Braun was there, because Walt was there for a lot of years.
No, it was not.
No?
I left, I graduated in 1963, which is, I think, 2 years before he came.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So who was the football coach back then?
Bob Sullivan.
Okay.
Bob Sullivan did everything. He was the athletic director, the phys ed teacher, the football and track coach, the JV basketball coach. That's what happened at the time.
Something which we don't see any longer.
Do not see it.
Right. So from Marysville High School, you went on to a greater education beyond that?
Central Michigan University, yes, yes.
And what did you master in?
History. I wanted to be a coach.
Okay.
And at that time, you had to be a teacher to be a coach. And so I said, okay, I really enjoy history. And so I was a history teacher, history phys ed, like most coaches were at the time.
Okay.
And
where did you first start your teaching career?
a little Saginaw Arthur Hill. When I was a senior, our basketball coach was Gary Lee. And when I was at Central, he left Marysville, went to Saginaw Arthur Hill. So it was a simple, easy thing to go, well, there's an opening, I'll interview there.
That seems to be the way it happens in a lot of cases, right?
Yep.
Whoever offers me the first opportunity.
That's exactly right. Well said.
Yeah. So then from there, where did you go?
I went to a little town called Newaygo for 2 years. My father-in-law suddenly passed away, and we moved back here, and we've been here since 1972.
Okay. And you taught other schools in the area?
I taught at KPAC in the Gifted and Talented program, and then I was a teacher and a principal in Detroit.
Okay. And I think you said St. Ambrose.
St. Ambrose Academy, yes, indeed.
What years roughly there?
Goodness, 1980s, mid-1980s to mid-1990s.
Okay. Now, St. Ambrose is famous for football back in the 60s.
George Perlis.
George Perlis
Yes.
was the head
Yep.
coach before he went on to college. I'm going to say they won a myriad of titles for the Detroit Public School League back
They
in the
did.
day.
Yep. Yep.
And I want to say St. Ambrose and Denby were big-time
Big
schools
time,
back
yep.
then.
Yes.
Before the mass exodus of people out of Detroit after the riots.
Yep,
But
absolutely.
those were the big schools.
Yep.
For people that don't know, St. Ambrose, because I know Grosse Pointe in the area, it's basically on the most northern edge of
Yes, it is. Yep.
Detroit Grosse Pointe.
Yep. Yeah, the school legally was in Detroit,
Right.
and the church is in Grosse Pointe.
Yeah, yeah. And the church is still there, I know.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
So you were down at St. Ambrose for quite a while. Then from there, where did you go?
Then I came back here.
Okay.
Yep.
And taught history as well?
Taught, I have been a substitute because in 1988 I started to coach baseball here.
Okay.
And so instead of driving back and forth, I
Sure.
just came here, and they said they had, if I was willing, they had substitute teacher openings that they could guarantee I'd be busy a long time.
Okay.
And it's
Never
been
stopped.
true. It has not stopped.
Okay. So you started coaching in the late 80s for baseball at St. Clair.
1988.
Were you the head coach then?
No, Rich Malowitz.
Okay. So all that time with Rich Malowitz till I want to say, I'm not going to count the years, but somewhere in the early 2000, 2010?
Yeah, Bill took over, McElrath.
Yes.
Took over, I want to say 2005,
Okay.
2006,
Okay.
and then I took over in 2015.
Okay. So you've been part of that program without taking my shoes off and counting for, 25, 30 years.
36, this is 36, yes.
Okay. If anybody's counting.
If anybody's counting, and the only reason I know that, this is the last. If we can play 35 games, last year we played 31, it all depends on the
Weather in spring.
then that will be 1,000 games for me, and if I can't get it right after 1,000, I'm not going to get it right.
That's a good number to retire on.
Yes, it is.
So in those amount of years, you've seen a lot of good teams. Obviously, one sticks out because you won the big prize, the ring, the state championship.
Absolutely does. 2011.
And so tell us about that team.
They had grown. They played together. They went to elementary school together.
Yep.
They played together forever. Even at that time, it was just beginning to be, well, after I'm 12 or 13, I'm going to go play Fed ball.
Sure.
Joel Seddon did, and then a couple others, Jake did. But they were basically, this is us the whole way through.
Yep.
And we won the regional in 2010, the title in 2011, and the regional in 2012 because
Right.
they were spaced. Jake Cronenworth and Jeremy Carroll were seniors in 12, so they were the guiders for
Okay.
that group.
And those are some names that pretty much everybody in our local area
Yes,
know about.
yep.
Jake, of course, probably being the most accomplished player from our
Yes,
area
yep.
to play in the major leagues now, what, 3 or 4 years?
This is this is 4 if you count the short one.
Sure,
so,
sure.
but not bad if you're the runner-up rookie of the year and a 2-time All-Star out of 3 years. That's not a bad deal.
Yeah. That's an impressive thing. It's one thing to get there.
Yep.
It's another thing to start and play a serious role in a team.
Well, and I think what happens often is that as soon as one person does it, then someone else out there is getting closer.
Sure.
What they often, particularly the younger kids, what they often forget about is we would practice, and he would come back and practice nearly every night.
Okay.
And it was like, yeah, okay, I know you want to be like Jake, but are you willing to work that hard?
Sure.
Like Tim Lolito,
Yep.
like Tyler Mott.
Yep.
There's extra stuff you have to
Yeah,
do.
those are elite people that
Yep.
have done some things that no ordinary person has done.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So let's go back to your coaching. You're a pitching coach.
Yeah, I was at the community college,
Okay.
and I coached. I went to school. I went to summer school at Central, and I had a class in athletic administration with Mike Falter from Yale, who was the AD, and he was the baseball coach at SC4. And we got talking, and he said, "I need an assistant. Would you be the assistant?" I said, Sure. He said, good, you're the pitching coach. And I went, all I knew about pitching was it was really hard to hit.
Sure.
So then I started to study and watch and read and talk to people. And so there are not a lot of pitching. There are head coaches who will coach the pitcher,
Sure.
but there are not many pitching coaches.
So tell me about the strategy involved in being a pitching coach for high school.
What it looks like on television, it never looks like in high school. The confidence level is not nearly the same. The ability to repeat your motion and repeat the pitch for command is usually not there.
Mm-hmm.
So from my perspective, you really have to watch your own pitcher. And the batter will give you spots you can put the ball, but often we can't put them there. So we spend a lot of time with what are you most comfortable with, and we try to create scenarios so that when they're there and it's bases loaded and 3-2 count, that's not the first time they've thought about this.
Right.
It isn't something brand new. And we try to repeat that and repeat that. There's so much in all of baseball, so much mental stress that you have to learn to deal with. That I think if you could coach one thing, you'd say, here's a ball, throw it, but you and I are going to talk about the mental game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's has made the difference, because the kids in St. Clair spend a lot of time in Little League and on the way up, and they get good coaching, and they win. So there's an inner confidence that we'll find a way to do this, and it makes my job a lot easier.
So now in a high school scenario, are you worried about how many different pitches they have?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm worried about, can you come somewhere near the strike zone?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
There are 8 people behind you and 1 in front. If you make the batter swing the bat and he puts it in play, the chances are really good that we're going to get an out.
Yep.
But they walk people and they try to, it's the stress of, it's 3-2, I think I'll throw a curveball. No, you won't. And when you do, often you don't have it mastered yet. So.
Now, are you generally calling pitches?
I have up till this year. Okay. Nick Black is the new varsity coach, and he was a catcher. So that fits for him. Yep. So I work with them. When the game comes, he calls the pitches.
Okay. But over the years you have?
Oh, yeah, I always have, yeah.
Now, from the standpoint of seeing you had pretty good success at the high school level, I'm guessing that certain pitchers are trusted more than others to throw their own pitches?
Yes. Yeah. We if we could generalize, we've had some pitchers that were on the varsity as freshmen. Well, by the time they're juniors and seniors, it's like, if you want to shake it off, shake it off. Usually freshmen and sophomores, it's like, if you want to shake it off, come sit by me.
Right.
That's what usually happens.
Right. You earn that with time and the experience.
Yep. And the same thing with the catchers. Scott Young and Nolan Young, Riley Gleason were experienced enough that it was like, it's yours.
They were another coach.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Makes it a lot easier because they can see better than I can.
They're right there on top of it. So in that, by the time one of your good pitchers comes to be a junior, they've got a pretty good command of what you're probably going to call in those situations?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time, particularly in the beginning, talking about, if this is the case, what would you want to throw? And if they can throw that, there's, that it just adds to their confidence level, and that's really significant.
Okay. Now, in the game of baseball, you hear a lot of talk when you see things on TV about, a slider, a curveball, different pitches. Explain what the difference between a slider and a curveball is. The
preface is when I was younger and I threw a slider or I threw a curveball, you could see the difference.
Okay.
Now they're beginning to blend together. But a curveball, if you're right-handed and throwing overhand, when you throw a curveball, your wrist has to be inside, all the pressure's on the middle finger, and you flip it like this. You end up, goes just like that. Okay. It's easy to demonstrate, it's hard to do, and the slider is outside.
Okay.
Fastball's here, curveball, slider.
And and it's doing different things coming in?
It does different things. The curveball rotates over like this, and so the idea is when it gets within about 10 feet, it starts to drop. And if you throw right, the more overhand you throw, the more 12-6 drop it is. If you throw a little more from the side, it's much more a slider.
Okay.
The slider is like it skids and drops a little bit. So,
what other pitches are there?
we teach the younger kids to throw a cut fastball, because most of the little leaguers who are most,
right,
not all, some are special, but their hands are smaller.
Sure.
So they can't really grip the ball correctly. So they're throwing a cutter anyway, and the cutter, all it is a fastball that's misheld.
Okay.
And when the batter swings, it moves about that far from, if you're right-handed, from right to left. So.
And so, with all this vast knowledge and experience at coaching youth, what age should kids stay away from trying to throw curveballs?
I think it's more, if they're taught to throw it correctly, they can throw it at a reasonable 11, 12. One of the problems that we run into when you watch the Little League on television is that A, they don't throw it correctly, and B, the batter can't hit it. So there's the danger of the coach saying, we can get these guys out.
Right.
And he struck out 10, but now his arm is 3 feet longer on one side than it was on the other because he got hurt. And this year in the International World Series, that's what happened. The pitcher got hurt.
They ran out of pitchers near the end.
I think so, yeah.
Hawaii.
Yes, yeah.
So you say somewhere in that 12-year-old age group.
Yeah, depending on if you throw it correctly, if it's not your main pitch, it cannot be your main pitch. Otherwise, you're going to hurt yourself. And your physique makes a difference. You know, if you're a big, strong kid and you know how to do it, okay. But if you're most kids, I'm going to get in trouble for this one. Most kids in Little League throw as hard as they can, and that's not really how the game works. You have to lessen that so that you have much more control.
Sure.
And if you can do that, what we talk about is inevitably we get kids that can throw it 3 out of 10 times, which isn't really very good.
Sure.
But if you're the batter and I throw it once, even if it's a ball, you know that I have that.
Sure.
So that's what you're trying to imprint on the batter, that good grief, he's got another pitch, and which one is he going to throw?
Right.
So you just try and slowly get them to throw it in the strike zone.
Now, do you do teaching clinics for the Little League?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I do them for the Little League. I do them for individuals. It's a fun time. It's easier to do individuals because you have their attention and it's just them. They're not one of 12 or 25 or 15 that takes a turn. And how'd you do? Well, the drill was half an hour and I threw 3 pitches. That didn't work.
It's not getting a 12-year-old.
Really isn't going to work. Yep.
Right. Let me throw something at you that I didn't have here, but I think you'll give me the answer. What is it? Everybody knows the word Tommy John.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
And Tommy John was named after the surgery that Tommy John had back in, I want to say, the early 70s.
Yep, I would agree with that.
What is, generally speaking, the cause of having to have Tommy John surgery?
Step number 1, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on television. Overuse.
Okay.
And I mean overuse by you threw too many pitches, you threw too many curveballs, you pitched too many times. The MHSAA, God bless them, has a pitch limit. And depending on the number of pitches you throw, you get X amount of time you can't pitch.
Right.
And the max is 105. You can complete the batter, but it's about 105. Summertime doesn't have that.
Right.
And,
so you're playing with rules for this period of time, but these other period of time, which is much longer, has no rules.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just worked with a young man who was going to college and was deeply concerned that he had lost 7 miles an hour on his fastball. I said, "What? You played in high school and pitched. You played all summer and pitched,
Didn't
and
rest.
now you're going to the fall ball and pitch. I think about you're going to lose some
Sure.
velocity. You just have to be careful. The basic idea is you can play catch every day. You can't pitch every day.
You
That
can't,
doesn't,
not with high
does
velocity.
not work. No.
Okay.
No.
So they need some more rest.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Rest works.
So then I'm going to go out on a limb and say, you as a baseball coach are probably wholeheartedly into this play different sports because of that.
Absolutely. Play different sports because it rests your shoulder, your
Sure.
arm, your elbow. Play different sports because you should. These are your friends you're
Right.
going to grow up with, and 10 years from now you're going to say, I wish I.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, there wasn't anything else to do.
Right.
You just played.
Played
Yeah.
whatever was in season.
Whatever, absolutely. What's your favorite sport? What's the time of the year? That's how you could tell. And I think that it also helps, you may find yourself in basketball when you thought you were a baseball player or football player or wrestler, but it's simply different. Because you're just, how many times, and I think about Jake, I cannot imagine, we only played 31 games this year, but we drove to some that got rained out.
Right.
What would you do? Most colleges play 60-some, depending on how successful
Sure.
they are. Jake's playing 162. That would drive me nuts.
That is crazy.
That is just forever. And I can't imagine mentally what
Right.
that does to
To
you.
have to be up,
Yes.
on
Yes.
for all those games.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's no downtime, and yes, they give them a day off. Well, take a day off and then come right back to work and see what.
Right.
It doesn't really work very well.
Now, I heard a story at the orthopedic surgeon's office recently. This is a true story, that the orthopedic surgeon's office said they have had people ask, can my child have Tommy John surgery? And the doctor would ask, what's the problem? Well, there is no problem, but there's a feeling and a thought permeating through society now that if this kid gets fixed at 16 years old with his Tommy John surgery, he's going to be better than he was before.
The idea is, well, he throws harder, and that's the MLB with, well, he's back after a year and a half.
Right.
Except he threw 97 to begin with.
Right.
And so now he's still right at 97, or Justin Verlander,
Right.
who I think, not that he didn't know how to pitch, but is a much better pitcher now than he was before he had
Sure.
the surgery, because he has to do different things.
Right.
It's a myth, folks.
Oh, it is, right,
I mean,
right.
it happens occasionally, but so does a lottery winner. So.
Yep. So tell us about your family, children, wife, so on and so forth.
We're a blended family. We have 6 children. I had 3. She had 3.
Your wife's name?
My wife's name is Karen.
I want to make sure she gets that.
That's a good point.
So I don't get a call next week.
That's right. That's right. She's a nurse. I usually leave it at that, but she's a psychiatric nurse,
Okay.
which usually elicits some response that, well, of course she is.
Dealing with you, right?
Yes, I've had that before. Our children are all grown. Our youngest is, sorry, Sarah, 44.
Okay. How many grandchildren?
Oh, 9.
Okay. Have you got a schedule for them?
Interesting you would say that. My grandson, I have a grandson who grew up in New York, and he was left-handed. And his mother was my oldest child, and was not really athletic. It was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And when he got to be about 3, she bought him a glove. He's left-handed. She was adamant, you were going to play catch. So his favorite thing to do was, and a 3-year-old, and I wasn't 3 at the time, was like,
Right.
you want to play a little ball? And we would go out and play until I got tired. We'd come back in and he'd say, you want to play a little ball? He was his high school team's most valuable player 3 years in a row. And now he goes to Davidson, and
Which is North Carolina?
North Carolina.
Okay, yep.
Thought he was going to walk on, and he said, I watched him practice and said, nope, not going to do that.
That's a whole nother
So,
dedication.
yes, yeah, that's what he said, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's funny how, some kids at that age will know, And it's even like when you look at high school, when kids are playing, say, Fed ball or summer ball, and you're playing with your friends in high school, and that's a lot of fun and a lot of camaraderie because you've known these kids since you're 8 or 10, and it's different when you get to college, I'm sure.
Absolutely is. And particularly if you go to a four-year school where you usually know no one or one other person, it's a grind.
It's a job, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's like, here's your class load. You have to go because you have to be eligible. But here's your workload. And I know that we're limited the amount of time we can be on the field, but we can do stuff not on the field. And it's like,
Boy.
really?
Yeah.
So you're really working two jobs.
Yep. Any defining moments in your career as far as all the teaching and all the coaching?
Several.
Yep.
One you had already talked about, 2011, and I lumped them together,
Sure.
10, 11, and 12.
Yeah, because of the run.
Yeah, because we had never won a regional and then won it. And when I was in high school, we were state champions, but there wasn't a playoff then. So with the young kids, there wasn't a playoff? Like, come on, come on. So there was a state championship in football there. Those were two. I really enjoy the relationships with the kids. That's ultimately, it's like, if you said, how many games have you won? I'd say, I don't know. I could not, I haven't guessed.
Yep.
But the relationships are more than anything else. Like you get invited to a wedding.
Sure.
Those are the highlights of, and they usually take place 10 years or more after they graduate.
Yep,
And that's the fun time to watch and see, and to see them on the street and meet their children. And
Especially being from a small town, Marysville,
Yes.
St. Clair, being involved with so many youth for all these years, you can't go very far without being.
I usually see
Coach
someone.
Mike.
Yes. Yep.
You know, I think you and Coach Fred Shaw and Coach Tony Monty probably are the three that come to mind that probably can't walk more than 10 steps.
Yeah, it's particularly in St. Clair.
Yeah.
I live in Marysville, but particularly in St. Clair,
Yeah, that's a cool thing. How about your mentors?
Bob Sullivan, without question. I thought I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. My grandfather was a tool and die maker and had a little shop in his basement. And he had two sons, and neither one wanted anything to do with that. So I was the designated, you're going to do this. And it was interesting, but you know, in the 9th grade, what do I know?
Right.
So we had a project in some class about what do you want to be, and you had to put together a booklet, and I was going to be a mechanical engineer. And that lasted a year until I met Bob Sullivan. It was like, I want to be that.
That's what I want to be.
This is what I want to do. And like I said, I would have been happy maybe doing something else, but coaching. But back then, they were intertwined. You had to do one to do the other. So that was going to be it.
I just had the conversation recently about the issue of how coaching has changed in respects to back when you went to high school, and I would say, gosh, all the way through it seemed to be the mid-2000s, 2010. It was not uncommon to have a coach for 10, 12, 15, 20, 25, even 30 years in some cases.
Yep.
But that's not so much the case anymore. It's more difficult to get the coaching. I mean, and you can go up and down the districts from Marysville, Port Huron, down all the way through St. Clair, Marine City, Algonac, and you don't find the longevity that they used to be.
Yes, yeah, and I think it dramatically affects the continuity.
Yeah.
Because what used to happen is someone would graduate from high school, be a good athlete, go away to college, come back and coach. And there was like a culture continuity.
They might do with the 8th grade, 9th grade for the varsity coach that they played for.
Yep. And gradually work their way up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And if you look at that mold or that model, and you go from, say, Marysville to Algonac, we can sit here and we can pull programs and talk about them. You know, Walt Braun's, reign after Bob Sullivan, he had the same coaches for probably 25, 30 years.
Yes.
And you can name the 6 or 8 of them.
Yep.
And they did great things, not just with football, but John Knuth with volleyball and basketball, and then St. Clair in the baseball and basketball for that matter. Marine City for football. Marine City for football right now has got some coaches that have been there, 20, 30 years. They might have been the 8th grade, 9th grade JV coach, and then they moved up, like you said.
Yep.
So it's funny how that has happened over the years. It's just that we're sort of a period in life that the tenure of coaches is not as long as it used to be.
Definitely not.
And so it's just a fact of life.
Yep.
And it's not, we can't even sit here and say it's a bad thing. It's just different.
Well, on the high school level, we are, I think, still in the situation where I want you to coach basketball. So you come to St. Clair High School as an example, and you coach basketball, and you're going to teach these classes. And you do it for a couple of years and say, this is enough.
Right.
Well, you need a job. So you stop coaching basketball, but you're still a teacher.
Yes.
So it's difficult to get someone
Right.
because there's no job opening in the school district.
Yeah.
And it's when I coached at the community college, that was the most difficult part. You never saw the players.
Right.
And I mean, you could check on them, but you couldn't see,
Right.
they're scattered
it's
around.
a very good, that whole maturing student, getting to know them better. They know who you are.
It wasn't there.
They know that you're looking over the shoulder. They know there's 4 sets of eyes watching, all those little
I
things.
need to, particularly at the community college, I need to go to class because somebody will check.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So I think we covered everything, Denny.
I think so.
So thank you for coming by.
It was my pleasure.
We will see you up in the booth in the upcoming
Okay.
weeks here. Me for St. Clair, you for St. Clair. And it just happens to be Marine City St. Clair
It
week.
does.
We might throw this up on YouTube or on a Facebook page and people will see it this week, but they also might see it on Channel 6 come November, December, January.
That's right. That's right.
But this is a big week for high school football. Marine City will be playing St. Clair Friday night, 7 o'clock. I know where you'll be.
Yes,
So,
you will.
we'll look forward to everybody. If you know of anybody to be interviewed, as I always say, check the number on the screen, 586-707-5811. And until next time, we'll say, see you next time in the zone. Thank you.